Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is round 10 from the 2013 World Chess Championship match between Anand and Carlsen. Going into this round, Carlsen has a 6-3 lead over Anand, and Carlsen, with the white pieces in this one, opened with e4, and for the first time in the match we get to see the Sicilian defense. Keep in mind, Carlsen needs only a draw or win in order to become world champion. It is a race again to 6.5 points. And we see the Rossolimo, knight blocks, and as a follow-up d4, if you're looking for a fairly quiet system in reply to the Sicilian, bishop b5 line might be something to look into. Carlsen at this stage in the match not wanting to complicate the position too much. So we have this exchange, and as soon as the bishop is questioned, white gives it up, but has at least inserted c4 so that there is going to be control over the two potential pawn breaks, d5 and b5. And we'll see a lot of emphasis placed on controlling these squares from here on out. So first, knight f6, bishop g5. You may not think there's too much difference between these two moves at this moment, but there certainly is. By keeping pressure on the knight, there's not time to fianchetto the bishop successfully, because you can take the knight off, damage the structure, and this knight would be granted a beautiful home on d5. But if you were to bring your knight out, well, now there's time for black to maybe consider this. But it's bishop g5, and so the bishop has to go elsewhere. Knight c3, bishop e7, castles, bishop c6, putting pressure on e4, and this is a quite common maneuver out of this variation to drop the queen back. There's a few reasons behind that. One, it vacates the d4 square for the knight, where I could grab the bishop, and it's still keeping a close eye on the two potential pawn breaks, d5 and b5. Black castles, sure enough the knight posts in the center, reinforces the structure with b3, and now we grab that bishop, and we play our rook to c1. This might be tempting as well. It's a half open file, but it doesn't address this potential pawn break. If rook on f to d1, we have b5, and you can't take because you would drop the knight. So we need to first secure our knight position, so b5 is no longer a good idea. You could just win a pawn. Maybe there's even something sneakier. So we don't do that. b5 is not allowed. Bishop has a question thrown to it. This is also a flight square. Knight to d7. There's two possibilities for this knight now. b6 isn't really doing anything but tying down the queen to its defense. Better post for the bishop. Hard square to argue with. Right? Very well centralized and pointing right at g7. There could maybe one day be another piece converging on that g7 point. So finally the last rook gets involved for black, a little flight square for white, and this queen is retreating to only take up a better post. She eventually wants to rake the 5th rank. All of the white rooks are working for white now, and with queen to d2 there is this common knight pivot that is available, exploiting the queen's unprotected nature. Notice how if b5, there could be knight d5. There's no time to take the knight, the queen. The queens are in tension. Queen on a5 is unprotected. If you take the queen, you don't take back right away. You take the piece with check, and only then take the queen back. And then white is doing quite well, reinforcing c4. The one thing you really don't want to happen structure-wise on the queen side for white is this sort of thing, where they're split. But clearly in this variation, the rooks are well positioned to keep the structure as is, an A-B structure. So we don't have that, but that is the idea that is in mind after queen d2, and the king gets out of it, king to f8, so that knight d5 isn't available. Queen takes queen. Well, you can't take a piece now with check. The king is on f8. So king f8 it is, queen to b2, and there might be some issue on this g7 square. Well, the king comes back, and during the live stream I had thought that maybe would have some repetition, the queen going back and forth, the king going back and forth, but certainly Anand is looking for more. It may seem like this is appealing to take that pawn and then land a discovered check, but it's just not working out. Black at the end of it is up a piece. So what did we have? We had a4 clamping down on this b5 advance. Queen to h5, knight to e2, two possibilities for the knight to maybe harass the black queen, bishop f6, and now at this point, now that the bishops are in tension with one another, as soon as he's no longer around to watch over d6, well, you're going to have a lot of pressure being placed on that point. He's a #1 defender of the d6 pawn. So he is challenged right away. He's recaptured, as otherwise you would be dropping the rook. You need to take the rook. You need to take with the rook. And after queen to e5, the idea will be to eventually question the queen's position. First, piling up on d6. Knight f6 is there. There's pressure now on e4. That is defended. And there is also no thought of d5. The queen would be hit. And so what gets played after rook e3? We have rook d7. And now a very clamping down type of move, a5. You can forget about playing b5. Queen is there to support, keep in mind. And now we have, after queen g5, an evaluation shift. What's maybe better, and this is a computer recommendation, is g5 to secure this queen position, but instead in the game, after a5, it was queen g5, which now allows e5, breaking open the position, hitting at these 2 points. The knight has to run in reverse in order to defend d6. Now in the game we had pawn takes pawn, but what was available was also knight g3, or maybe even knight c3, with ideas of hitting the queen and then also converging on d6. However, what was chosen is the immediate capture, and this pawn needs to be tracked down right away. If something like b4 c5 is allowed and that pawn is defended with that sort of structure, well, it's going to be game over for black. So it's rook c6, f4 first, and we're going down a line now. We're going to have all major pieces exchanged, and we're going to enter a knight, king, and pawn endgame alone. So f4 is first inserted. The queen needs to drop back to corral the pawn on d6. And we have everything trained on this point, and sure enough, all major pieces coming off the board. And it was important, by the way, in all of those cases that the knight would be the last one to capture, as otherwise there are moments where c5 can be played, exploiting the pin on the d file. So that's why we have that exact order coming about, and the knight being the last one to recapture. And now in this endgame, the idea is to get the king more active, and very active is this white king with these next moves, making a beeline right for the b pawn. Black is there, however, just in the nick of time to stop white from putting pressure on b7. So what follows is getting the knight to a better post, an even better post on e4, looking at the d6 square, hitting at f7, also looking for some fork, maybe picking up the g pawn. Knight e3, g3, a question is thrown to the knight. He does run into d6, and after g5 we give a check, and another check, and now this is where there was a big think for Carlsen, having about 61 minutes remaining on his clock. He invests a good chunk of that, nearly a half hour spent on knight g8, and you may wonder why so much time was invested on such a move. Well, look at the variation that comes about, where after takes king g7, the knight, he's trapped. White is giving up the knight in exchange for tracking down these pawns and then having a foot race, literally a foot soldier race, to see who can queen first. So he doesn't just want to give himself up. He needs to take somebody down with him. He grabs a pawn, at least on f5, and then the king hunts down the b pawn, whereas the knight tracks down the f pawn, and before you know it, we have two passed pawns. King b6 is there, clearing the way for the pawn and also shouldering off the knight. It's a big race, and at the end of it, we have both sides queening. White queens first, and then takes up a nice residence in the center. Even without these pawns on the board, it's still a very difficult win for black. Queen and knight versus queen should be a theoretical draw, but we have the game actually ending much more abruptly. We keep in mind that you can't at this point take the pawn. She has to watch over the knight. So what is tried is a knight check, king b5, knight takes on b3. The queen now is able to give a check, and at this moment I was able to notice that the game would be ending very soon, because by force it would either be a perpetual check or the queens would be exchanged, and that right there would secure a draw. So what was played is king to h6, and what was the follow-up? Queen b6, forcing a queen exchange. What else would there have been to do? Going to one of these squares, well, the queen basically keeps making use of these 3 squares. Wherever the king goes, you continually give a check until he has to go. Well, it's either a perpetual check or he ends up somewhere on this 6th rank. So what was played is queen c7, king h6, queen b6, and the queens are exchanged. And with that, well, the game finishes up like this, with the pawns being captured. And at this moment right here, we go all the way down to move 65, knight takes pawn, and it is at this point, it is of course a draw. No side can win, and with that, the World Chess Championship title goes to Magnus Carlsen. So congratulations to him. I've covered all games now. It feels good to be done, and I hope you enjoyed tuning in for this. Maybe this is the first video you're watching, but I covered all of these games, all 10 games of this match, and at the end of this video I'll include a playlist so you can check them out if you missed any of them. So thank you for tuning in, thank you for your support as well, and I hope you enjoyed this World Chess Championship match, and again, congratulations to Magnus Carlsen. That's all for this video. Take care. Bye.